Hey guys, tonight we journey into the dim, creaky alleys of the past, where the candles flicker low, the air smells like damp wool and cabbage stew, and you're standing barefoot in a medieval pigsty, trying to remember why you agreed to kill someone in the first place. You're not a knight. You're not a spy. You're kind of a freelance mistake with a knife, and you're cold, you're hungry, and you've just been handed something that may or may not be a dagger. It could also be a sharpened spoon. Hard to say in this lighting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I love seeing the sleepy corners of the world coming together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The job sounded cool, until you found out there's no dental, no union, and no clear escape plan. You're expected to slip into manors guarded by half-drunk mercenaries with clubs and leave without being caught, stabbed, or catapulted into a moat. Honestly, you probably won't survive this. You're an assassin. Kind of. Technically, maybe. Well, someone called you that at a tavern last night, right before vomiting into your ale, so it counts. You're 26 years old, which already puts you well past the average life expectancy for your line of work. You've got a dodgy knee from that job in Bruges, a scar under your left rib, and a growing suspicion that your current employer has no intention of paying you. Again. You don't belong to any fancy order. There's no assassin guild with matching cloaks and secret handshakes. What you do have is a knife, a grudge, and some mildly impressive sneaking skills. Enough to lift a coin purse, not enough to scale a stone wall under arrow fire. This morning began with mud. Specifically, you woke up in it. Somewhere on the outskirts of a village too poor to have a name. A cow stared at you like it expected you to apologize. Your boots were gone. Again. The only person waiting for you was a contact named Ragmouth Henry, who passed you a letter, sealed in wax, and smelling faintly of goose droppings. The job? Remove a certain magistrate from the land of the living. Payment: 3 silver and safe passage on a barge to Ghent. You tried asking why. Henry just blinked at you. Then gave you the dagger. Bent tip, chipped edge, sticky handle. Probably sap. Hopefully sap. Welcome to the Assassin's Starter Pack. No cloak, no creed, just paranoia, poor nutrition, and a deeply uncomfortable urge to cough.
You trudge through the underbrush toward the magistrate's manor, pretending your tunic doesn't smell like sheep, and your stomach isn't about to stage a protest. You'll need to get close, pretend to be a woodcutter or a pilgrim, or just someone who's very, very lost. Historians still argue whether assassins in the medieval period were organized agents of powerful patrons, or just disposable tools hired to solve problems quietly. You lean toward the second. Mostly because no one ever gave you a mission scroll or a dramatic speech, just vague directions and a weapon less cleaned during a lunar eclipse. Your target is a man named de Rochemont, known for taxing peasants into the grave and then charging their families to bury them. You're not losing sleep over this one. Well, except for the part where his estate is guarded by mercs who probably know how to use swords that don't look like they were found in a creek. The plan is simple. Get in, get close, get gone. But that's where reality hits. Nothing in your starter kit prepares you for dogs, locked doors, or social etiquette. You once tried to poison a cup of mead and accidentally knocked it over, only to be caught cleaning the spill by the victim's niece. She offered you a towel, you panicked, and jumped out a window. Fun fact: one fringe method used by actual historical assassins involved hiding inside barrels delivered to kitchens. Yes, like actual wine barrels. You tried that once. The kitchen dog found you. You still flinch at the sound of corks popping. Back on the trail, you spot the manor's perimeter wall. It's mossy, low enough to climb, and unfortunately, topped with very non-decorative glass shards. Your best bet is the back entrance, near the stable. As you sneak closer, you hear voices. 2 guards talking about cheese, loudly, and off-key singing. They're drunk. Perfect. You slip through a gap in the hedge, step on a rake, and barely suppress a scream as it thwacks your shin. Graceful. You reach the kitchen door. Unlocked. It creaks like it's been waiting all year to rat you out. Inside, the manor is warm, filled with the scent of baking bread and roasted meat. Your stomach makes a noise that might register as betrayal in several languages. You hide behind a tapestry and wait. The magistrate enters 15 minutes later, muttering about accounts and holding a roast leg of something. You recognize your moment. You move forward and sneeze. He turns. You freeze. He blinks. You blink. "Do I know you?" he asks. You say the first thing that comes to mind. Rat Inspector. Shockingly, it works for 3 whole seconds. Then he screams. You lunge. There's flailing, yelling, and something sticky hits your face. The knife connects. He falls. You panic. You run. You make it back to the forest with nothing but your dagger and a stolen turnip. Congratulations. You're a successful assassin. Technically. Possibly. You also smell like roast meat, blood, and mild terror.
And you've just realized you have no idea where the barge to Ghent is. You keep walking. There's really no better word for it. You walk, you trip, you flinch at every twig snap. Occasionally, you check your pockets to make sure the magistrate didn't somehow curse you with his final breath. You've heard stories. Paranoid stories. One guy swore he was haunted by the smell of garlic after offing a fryer. Anyway, your turnip's gone. Eaten halfway through the 2nd mile. Not satisfying, but slightly better than chewing your own regrets. You're heading toward the next village, hoping to catch a wagon, or at least steal someone's sense of direction. But on the way, it hits you. The question that's always been there in the back of your brain, stewing like a suspicious stew. What even is an assassin, really? You've heard the word tossed around like old bread. Half the time it means killer for hire. The other half it just means that guy who disappeared after the Duke's horse exploded. No one agrees on what makes someone an assassin versus just a really irritable local with a pointy stick. Some say it's about stealth, discretion, poison in the soup, dagger in the ribs, vanishing before the chambermaid can drop her tray. Others insist it's about motive, political assassination, religious zeal, personal vendetta wrapped in a shadowy paycheck. But really, you've seen all types, and they all have one thing in common. They rarely get what they were promised. You remember Otto? Otto was technically your mentor. He had a limp, an eye patch, and an intense love of dry bread. He claimed to have worked for Bishop once, said he poisoned a rival by hiding venom in his shoe polish. You didn't even know people polished shoes back then. Otto said an assassin needed to be more than just a killer. You needed finesse, charm, the ability to convincingly pretend to be a chimney sweep or grieving widow, preferably both. He also believed in the power of dramatic exits. One time, after successfully offing a courier in Antwerp, Otto set a bakery on fire as a distraction. It worked, but he also burned off his eyebrows. Small price to pay, apparently. The word assassin, historians think, may have come from the Hashashin, a secretive group operating in the Middle East during the Crusades. They were known for surgically precise killings, mountain fortresses, and a terrifying ability to blend into crowds. Some say they used hashish to psych themselves up. Others argue that's just Orientalist gossip, invented by their enemies. Historians still argue whether the Hashashin were ruthless killers, misunderstood rebels, or simply a convenient legend for frightened nobles to blame when their enemies mysteriously dropped dead in their sleep. Either way, you are not one of them. You once pretended to be a candlemaker's apprentice for 3 weeks, just to get access to a minor baron. He turned out to be allergic to beeswax, and never left his panic room. You got paid in goats. 1 goat. And it bit you. Sometimes you meet others like you. You don't talk shop, too risky. But there's a look, a quiet nod, a shared glance at the one exit no one else notices. Some carry blades, some carry poisons. One guy only used sharpened playing cards. You didn't ask questions. There's no glamour in this line of work, no legends, No ballads, no kindly tavern bards singing about the silent shadow of Tournai. If you're lucky, people forget you. If you're really lucky, they don't recognize you. You pass a peddler on the road. He offers you a roasted squirrel on a stick. You trade your last button for it. Squirrel's fine. Crunchy. Tastes vaguely of moss and regret. You finally arrive at the village. It's the kind of place where chickens outnumber humans, and every building leans slightly like it's too tired to stand upright. There's an inn. You're not staying there. You duck into the blacksmith's shed and find an old acquaintance, Laura. She used to fence for you. No, not the sword kind, the stolen goods kind. She's sharp, quick, and always smells faintly of vinegar. Another job gone sideways? She asks, without even looking up from her work. You shrug. She sighs. You assassins are all the same. Show up half dead, ask for bandages, disappear with a candlestick. You grin. Only did that once. She points at a bench. Sit. Tell me how many people are mad at you this week. You recap. She listens. Mostly. When you get to the part about pretending to be a rat inspector, she actually stops hammering. You said what? Seemed like a good idea at the time. She laughs. You're the worst assassin I've ever met. Yet somehow, you say, flexing your swollen ankle, still alive. You spend the night in her shed. Warm hay, a single candle, and a heavy sense of déjà vu. You dream about goats. Again. The next morning, you're back on the road. The barge to Ghent is supposedly docking downriver. You've got two choices. Walk straight and hope the universe throws you a miracle, or veer left and try to find work. You choose left. Because food. In this next town, a man named Emmerich is looking for someone with delicate hands and no scruples. You meet him at dusk. He's wearing rings. Too many rings. You do quiet work? He asks. Sometimes, you say. I need someone removed. You raise an eyebrow. Removed how? He smiles. Surprise me. And that, right there, is the assassin's curse. The job is never just about death. It's about interpretation. Morality on a sliding scale. One man's justice is another man's treason. You accept, not because it's a good idea, but because your stomach just growled loud enough to scare a passing goat. Again. Later that night, you sit by a stream, sharpening your knife on a whetstone so dull it's practically decorative. You wonder, am I really an assassin? Or just a desperate, underfed problem?
But mostly, you just want a definition that sticks. Your boots squelch. That's the sound your life has come to. You're halfway through a damp pasture, feet soaked, hood pulled low, trying not to be recognized by the butcher you may or may not have accidentally threatened last spring. He's got a good memory, and better aim with a cleaver. The past few days have been a haze of muddy roads, bad bread, and worse directions. You've eaten half a radish, been mistaken for a tax collector, terrifying, and stepped in something that might have once been a duck. You've also picked up another job. Sort of. It came from a man named Brother Tolan. Not really a brother, unless you count the kind who sells relics that suspiciously resemble chicken bones. He found you behind a shrine, sharpening your blade and cursing softly under your breath. I have need of a skilled hand, he said. You looked up. You've got the wrong guy. He smiled, the kind of smile people give when they already know you're going to say yes. The Bishop of Arden, he whispered, has forgotten the vows of humility. Ah, that kind of job. You should have walked away, said something witty, and faded into the mist. But your stomach growled again, and Brother Tolan handed you a small loaf of bread. Deal. You agreed to handle the bishop, discreetly, quietly, ideally without public spectacle or divine retribution. So now you're skulking through the outer districts of Arden, trying not to be seen, wondering if this time, finally, you'll figure out how to be a real assassin. Because, let's be honest, you're winging it. There's no training, no secret manuals. You learned everything you know from messy experience and half-remembered tavern gossip. Like the time you tried to climb a tower using a rope made of stolen laundry. You got halfway up before the drawstring on someone's underpants snapped and dropped you into a barrel of pickled onions. That scar never healed right. Real training? It didn't exist for people like you. Nobles trained to duel,
monks trained a scribe. You got into this because your cousin owed money to the wrong people and you were the only one fast enough to hop a wall. The average assassin didn't go to shadow school. They picked up skills as needed: climbing, lying, vanishing. A lot of it was trial by fire, or arrow, or angry goose. You tried formal training once. A guy named Mathis promised to teach you the ancient arts. Turned out ancient meant he'd been stabbed 5 times and survived. Day 1, he taught you how to open a window without making noise. Day 2, how to fake a sneeze to cover footsteps. Day 3, he drank too much mead, fell off a roof, and broke both arms. That was the end of your formal education. You learned more from watching people. How castle guards always pause to flirt with the serving girl. How a man carrying firewood never gets stopped. How a stable hand can go anywhere if they look annoyed enough. These little things, they're your curriculum.
And you've become pretty decent at them. Decent enough to live. Barely. Historians still argue whether there were any real schools for assassins in medieval Europe. Some believe religious sects doubled as training grounds, knights in robes teaching both prayer and poison. Others say most killers were just ex-soldiers with flexible morals and access to cloaks. You suspect both are true, depending on the budget. There's a myth about the Order of the Blackleaf, said to train children from age 7 in the arts of stealth, silence, and slipper throwing. Yes, slipper. You heard it from a drunk minstrel in Rouen. He swore his cousin was killed by a flying shoe. You spend the night in a stable, pretending to be asleep while rats explore your backpack. You dream of quiet places, warm kitchens, feather beds, bread that doesn't crunch when it's not supposed to. When morning comes, you clean your blade and make your way towards the bishop's estate. It's a modest fortress, humble, in the same way a lion wearing a hat is casual. You circle it twice, noting guards, exits, and one very promising drainage tunnel. It's always the tunnels. Your plan? Sneak in during Vespers, disguise yourself as a monk, and get close while the bishop's distracted by incense and pride. It should work. It's also the same plan you used in Relberg, which failed. You ended up giving a sermon about forgiveness while hiding behind a pillar. No one noticed. Apparently, you were very moving. You wait until dusk. The city settles into its lull, market stalls closing, candles flickering on, children being shooed indoors. You slip into a servant's cloak and walk like you belong. Confidence is the best disguise. The tunnel is narrower than expected. Wet stone, slimy moss, and something that feels suspiciously like regret under your boots. You hold your breath, squeeze through, and emerge behind the chapel. Inside, chanting fills the air. Deep, slow. A rhythm meant to lull the soul. You move silently past stone pillars, ducking behind a statue of Saint Felwyn the Flatulent. Yes, he's real, and no, you don't want to know the story. The bishop stands near the altar, arms raised, voice thick with self-importance. He's flanked by guards who look half asleep. Now or never. You approach, eyes on the prize, dagger ready. Then he turns and smiles. You must be the rat inspector. You blink. What? Then you realize you've been made. Brother Tolan played you. The bishop knew you were coming. You run. There's chaos. A dropped candle. Screams. You trip over a nun. Someone yells, "Heretic!" and you nearly get crushed by a pew. You dive back into the tunnel, now filled with smoke. Your cloak catches. You leave it behind. You're bleeding. Again. You emerge into the street coughing, covered in soot, and with exactly 0 coins to your name. Successful? No. Alive? Somehow. As you limp away, you wonder, do real assassins mess up this often? Probably. You just don't hear about them, because the ones who fail don't usually walk away. You're starting to think medieval assassins weren't feared because of how many people they killed. They were feared because of what they had to go through just to get close.
Because if there's one universal truth you've learned in this deeply uncomfortable line of work, it's this. People in power smell terrible. Like, really terrible. You'd think nobles would be fragrant, powdered, perfumed, walking sachets of lavender and smugness, but no. The reality is far, far more nasal. You're crouched behind a curtain right now, just feet from a count's personal chambers. You've slipped past 3 guards, pretended to be death, and narrowly avoided stepping in a chamber pot, all for this moment. And all you can think is, what in the holy name of Saint Itchfoot is that smell? It's a thick, meaty, sour stench, sweat, mutton grease, unwashed wool, and what you hope is moldy cheese. The nobleman lets out a wet cough and shifts in his chair. You hold your breath. Not because of nerves, because of him. You once read that many medieval elites believed bathing weakened the body, that water could open the pores and let disease in. So they avoided it, enthusiastically. Instead, they layered on scented oils and changed their undergarments, rarely, thinking that was enough. Spoiler, it wasn't. There's an open debate among historians whether this aversion to hygiene was as widespread as we're led to believe. Some argue the wealthy did bathe, just not often. Others say it depended entirely on local customs and climate. But whatever the consensus, one thing's certain: you have never met a clean target. Your jobs take you close. Too close. You once spent 8 hours hiding in a straw mattress, only to crawl out with fleas in places you didn't even know had skin. Another time, you disguised yourself as a barber and had to shave a merchant's beard before you stabbed him. He wept through the whole thing, not from fear, just from the itch. Tonight's target is Count Aloy of Dunthrop. He's a collector of fine relics, which means he hoards finger bones in jars and thinks anything vaguely gold-colored belongs to a saint. He's also been accused of ordering the quiet disappearances of 3 political rivals, which, ironically, makes you feel better about your presence here. You adjust your grip on the dagger. Count Aloy stretches, burps, and lets out a contented sigh that smells like rotten goose. You resist the urge to gag audibly. He gets up, waddles toward the window, and begins muttering about the stars. That's your moment. You step forward, silent, fluid, and your foot lands in a pile of discarded eel bones. Crunch. He turns. Your brain scrambles. "Rat Inspector," you blurt, again. He squints. "You're here about the walls?" You nod. "Sure, why not?" He walks past you, pointing to some cracks in the stone. "Terrible problem. I hear the rats whisper Latin." You nod again. Classic behavior. You stab him. Clean, quiet, right under the ribs. He sighs, collapses onto a pile of musty robes, and dies smelling like fermented onions. You leave through the back window, grateful for fresh air and doubly grateful he didn't scream. This is the rare kill that goes to plan, if your plan involved lying about rats and mentally blacking out halfway through. Still, the stink sticks with you. It always does. You once asked a fellow freelancer, quiet girl named Isabette, how she dealt with the smells. She handed you a pouch of dried herbs and said, "Keep it under your nose and don't breathe through your mouth. That's worse." You tried it, ended up sneezing mid-assassination. Still got the job done. Barely. There's a saying among your kind: the blade kills, the nose suffers. You've considered inventing nose plugs or just learning to disassociate. That seems easier. But it's not just body odor. Oh no, medieval targets come with accessories: lice, fleas, damp garments that cling to the skin like grief, and the occasional unsettling rash. You remember the Bishop of Grunwald. His bath was a myth. His chamber pot overflowed onto a bearskin rug. He had a gouty foot the size of a melon and breath so acidic it once made a cat faint. You didn't kill him. He died of natural causes mid-confession. You were hiding behind a curtain, waiting for your chance, when he just stopped. You waited an hour to be sure.
And somehow, this is your job. This is what you do. You don't just sneak, you endure. Historians like to focus on the strategies, the geopolitics, the motivations behind assassinations. But they rarely talk about the fact that to kill someone, you often have to sit 3 feet from them, inhaling their fermented foot stench and pretending not to cry. There's no glamour here, no elegance, just you, a blade, and an uncomfortably vivid understanding of what medieval hygiene was really like. You reach the riverbank by dawn. Wash your hands, wash your face. Consider washing your soul, but decide that might take more than water. You look at your reflection. You're thinner than you used to be. Paler, eyes always tired. But you're alive, somehow. And for now, that's enough. Even if you do smell like boiled sock. It's well past midnight. The moon's up, full and judgmental, hanging above you like it knows exactly how badly this is about to go. You're ankle deep in mud. Again. Your job tonight was simple in theory. Infiltrate a minor noble's country estate and quietly dispatch him before sunrise. But whoever wrote that plan has clearly never tried to sprint through a swamp in medieval footwear. Because here's the thing. Assassins do most of their work at night, which sounds cool, mysterious, stealthy, until you factor in zero street lighting, half-frozen puddles, and shoes that feel like they were cobbled together by someone who hates feet. Your boots, if they can even be called that, are currently soaking wet, half detached at the heel, and filled with things that squish. They squeak with every step, not in a cute way, in a you're definitely going to die way. You've tried fixing them, sewed them up with stolen twine, stuffed them with hay, even traded an old dagger for a mismatched pair of sandals once. That lasted until you had to run across cobblestones and nearly broke every toe you owned. There's a reason historical assassins weren't known for their footwear. You read somewhere that medieval peasants had about 2 pairs of shoes in their entire lives. You believe it. At this rate, you're going to be buried in yours, unless they disintegrate first. You reach the estate's outer wall, breath steaming in the cold air. It's one of those tall, smug walls, too high to climb without a rope, too new to have crumbled in helpful spots. You try the gate. Locked. Obviously. You sigh. Check your pack. Rope? Nope. Grappling hook? Please. What do you think this is? A fairy tale? No. Your best bet is the drainage ditch. Again. Why is it always the drainage ditch? You slide in, instantly regret it. It smells like fermented pondweed and disappointment. Cold water seeps into your boots, and something brushes your ankle that you hope is a plant. You crawl, curse, scrape your elbow on a brick, and emerge near the state. You whisper a prayer to whatever god handles assassins, probably the same one in charge of locksmiths and cowards, and press on. You pass a servant, dozing on a stool. You freeze, barely breathing. His snoring covers your footsteps like a lullaby for bad decisions. Inside the manor, everything changes. Stone floors, echoes, shadows thrown by dying candles. It's a beautiful house, in the way that cold marble is beautiful. Expensive, lifeless, and just waiting to echo your final scream. You're here for Sir Wendred, a man with terrible taste in curtains and a habit of murdering his rivals with plausible deniability. You've read his record: burned barns, vanished heirs, sudden hunting accidents. You're not here to make a judgment. You're here to even a score. Your source said he sleeps alone, with no guards inside his room. You make your way up the stairs, avoiding the 4th step. Loose, squeaky, traitorous. His chamber's at the end of the hall. The door is slightly ajar. That's either a very good sign or a very, very bad one. You ease it open, blade in hand. The room is dark. You see the lump on the bed, breathing. Deep. Slow. You step forward, and your boot farts. Not like an actual fart, but that squeaky, wet mud noise that sounds like one. Loud, awkward, incredibly assassin-unfriendly. The lump stirs. You freeze. Then it sits up. "Who's there?" a groggy voice mumbles. You do the only thing you can think of. "Rat Inspector," you whisper. A beat. Then,
It's 3 in the morning. I'm very dedicated, you say. He reaches for a candle. You have seconds. You lunge. It's not elegant. There's no graceful strike. You trip on a bearskin rug, slam into the bedpost, and flail wildly. But your blade finds its mark. He gasps. You whisper an apology. Then silence. Your heart pounds. You listen. No footsteps, no shouts. Just the soft crackle of the dying fire. You make it out the same way you came in. Through the ditch. Covered in mud, smelling like guilt and pond scum. You walk for hours. Feet aching, knees wobbling, soaked to the bone. You reach a village as dawn breaks, feet blistered, eyes bloodshot, stomach empty. You limp into the market and buy a crust of bread with the last of your coin. The baker looks at you like you might bite him. You don't. Yet. You find a corner by the blacksmiths and peel off your boots. Big mistake. Your feet are pale, wrinkled, and somehow both numb and on fire. You have 4 new blisters. One has its own blister. You sigh. Assassins weren't meant to look cool. Not in real life. They weren't shadow-dancing rooftop heroes with sleek moves and wind-blown cloaks. They were people like you, tired, limping, covered in grime, and painfully aware that stepping on a sharp rock while running from guards could be a career-ending event. Historians still debate whether medieval assassins used special footwear for stealth. Some point to soft leather soles, others say they went barefoot when needed. Either way, you've tried both, and your toes have opinions. You spot a cobbler's stall. He's got boots, real ones, thick soles, tied with proper laces. You ask the price. It's more than you've got. You consider trading your dagger. But then what? You sigh, thank him, and walk away. Barely. The truth is, being an assassin isn't just about killing. It's about endurance. You walk, you wait, you sneak, stumble, bleed, and blister. And you do it all with shoes that would make a monk weep. You tell yourself it'll be worth it. One day, you'll retire, buy a pair of boots that actually fit, and never, ever step in a ditch again. The dagger is curved, not in a stylish, exotic way. More in the someone dropped it and stepped on it way. You've just pulled it out of a pile of rusted iron scraps behind a tanner's shed. It was part of your payment. The tanner said it had character. You suspect it also has tetanus, but you'll use it anyway. Because this is medieval assassination, and your weapons are rarely up to the job. You test its edge on your thumb. Dull. You try sharpening it with a rock. Better, but still likely to bounce off anyone wearing more than 1 layer of clothing. So you sigh, wrap it in cloth, and tuck it into your belt. It joins your growing collection of unreliable tools of death. Let's be honest, your gear sucks. You've used knives that snapped mid-thrust, crossbows that misfired so dramatically they became folktales, poisons that only work on people under 5 stone, and once accidentally gave a baron the hiccups instead of cardiac arrest. You once used a garrote made from sheep intestines. It worked, but you don't recommend it. The smell alone could traumatize a grown man. Still, you get creative. You've hollowed out candlesticks to hide blades, sharpened soup spoons into stiletto points, and disguised poison vials in perfume bottles. That one was effective, until the lady you were impersonating drank it by mistake. You gave her husband a refund. Historians often debate how sophisticated medieval assassins' weapons actually were. Some claim elite killers used exotic Eastern steel, complex venoms, even early gunpowder devices. Others insist most just had good aim and bad luck. You fall somewhere in the middle. Once, you used a custom dagger from a Spanish fence. Beautiful craftsmanship, carved hilt, sharp as betrayal. You dropped it in a latrine 10 minutes into the mission. Never found it again. There's a man you sometimes meet in the alleyways of Bruges. He calls himself the Artisan. Real name, Dave. He builds hidden blades and poisoned hairpins, and once sold you a flute that could fire.
You've tried hemlock, belladonna, aconite, and something a traveling merchant swore was desert cobra spit. That one just made a bishop hallucinate for 3 hours.
He gave a sermon about flying fish and offered you a job. You once used a powder that was supposed to induce immediate unconsciousness. Turns out it only caused hiccups and mild sweating. Your target thought he was coming down with something and went home early. You missed your chance. You did, however, steal his shoes. Small victories. You've heard tales of advanced gadgets, rings that deliver poison via a handshake, shoes with retractable blades, belt buckles that shoot darts. You've seen exactly none of those. Your reality? Rusty daggers, borrowed short bows, and a kitchen knife you found stuck in a fence post during a village argument over turnip taxes. And don't get started on your armor. Wait, you don't have armor. You have layers. Layers of linen, leather, and misplaced hope. Armor is loud, heavy, and screams, "Stab me last." You're supposed to be invisible, unseen, a breeze in the dark. But that doesn't help when someone spots you and swings an axe. That's when you realize you've got exactly one advantage. People still underestimate you. You look tired, dirty, poor. You limp sometimes. You cough a lot. No one expects you to be dangerous. So when the moment comes, you're already close enough to whisper goodnight. Tonight you've been hired to eliminate a captain of the watch. Arrogant, brutal, deeply corrupt. Also very well protected. But you've been told he likes wine. A specific wine. Imported, rare, red as blood. You spend 3 days tracking a bottle, then bribe the tavern boy to deliver it. Your poison of choice? Monkshood, mixed with honey to disguise the taste. You wait outside, disguised as a tired baker. He drinks it. You hear the bottle shatter, then a crash. You never go in. You just walk away. Sometimes the weapon isn't the knife. It's the plan. But most times, it is the knife, and it's chipped, bent, or dull. You've learned to adapt. You carry 2 blades now, one short, one hidden. You've lined your sleeves with narrow pockets. Your boots hide throwing pins, though you've never hit anything important with them. And you've gotten very good at improvising, like the time you used a tray of roasted chestnuts as a distraction, or a candle snuffer as a bludgeon, or a book of psalms with a sharpened spine. You once faked a seizure to get close to a city clerk, bit his arm for realism, didn't even need your weapon. It's not always elegant, it's rarely efficient, but it works, sometimes. You're not proud of all your kills. Some were
But until then, you'll keep using what you've got, because intent kills more often than steel, and because every time you pull a blade that shouldn't work, and it does, you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're getting the hang of this. You're standing outside a manor full of angry, drunk people with swords, and the only thing between you and escape is a garden maze, 2 locked gates, and a swan that definitely wants to kill you. So yeah, getting in was the easy part. Getting out? Well, that's where most assassins mess up. See, in the popular imagination, assassins glide in and out like mist. Ghosts, with perfect timing, vanishing into the night before the body hits the floor. But in real medieval life, you usually had 1 shot to get in and 0 plan for what came after. No grappling hook, no magical rope ladder, just raw panic, and possibly a pig costume. Let's rewind. 2 hours ago, you entered the banquet posing as a wine boy. You even had a tray. You smiled. You bowed. You offered a cup to the wrong person, then the right person, Sir Halric, the target. Vile temper, worse breath, known for extorting land from nuns and making archers shoot fish for sport. You slipped something into his drink. Nothing deadly, just a bit of monkshood mixed with sour ale. You were planning to finish the job later, quietly, when his stomach started sounding like a boiling stew. But Halric's reaction was not what you expected. He slammed the mug, demanded the tastiest servant be brought to his quarters immediately, and, yep, you.
Now you're in his private chamber. His guards are outside the door, and he's unfastening his belt. You panic, not because of what he wants, but because your plan was not built to handle this. You go for the dagger, but it's stuck in your boot. You lunge anyway, aiming low. The blade slices poorly. He bellows. You bolt. And now we're back in the garden. You sprint. They're shouting behind you. One guard trips, another yells treason, which is technically not even the right crime. You vault a hedge. Bad idea. Thorn bush. Your pants catch. You curse. Somewhere nearby the swan hisses again. You hiss back. It doesn't help. You reach the outer wall. Lock gate, of course. You consider climbing, but it's high, slick with moss, and the torchlight behind you is growing fast. That's when you remember the storm drain, because there's always a storm drain. You dive in, head first. Splash, slime. You gag. You crawl. You're cold, wet, bleeding slightly, and you smell like 5 different kinds of bad soup. But you're alive. You emerge in a ditch. The town is 2 miles west. You start walking. And this is the part no one writes about, the getting out part. The hours after the adrenaline wears off and you realize you haven't eaten since sunrise, that you've lost your coin pouch, that your blade is dull and your pants are torn, and you may have pulled something important in your shoulder.
Historians still argue whether assassins planned full exit strategies or just relied on chaos and luck. Based on personal experience, it's luck. Always luck. The best you can do is hope for a distraction. Once you started a kitchen fire by knocking over a gravy pot. Another time you let loose a pig during a wedding and snuck out during the squealing. You've pretended to be a ghost, a very dedicated rat catcher, and once, memorably, a traveling tooth fairy. Don't ask. You've hidden in hay carts, barrels, sacks of turnips, and under a noblewoman's skirts. She knew. She didn't care. You left her a silver. The worst exit you ever made? Jumped off a roof into a duck pond. It was frozen. You broke through. The guards laughed so hard they forgot to shoot. Tonight, you limp into town around dawn. You blend in with farmers headed to the market. No one gives you a second look. You smell like work and regret. You sit in the square, chewing on a hunk of old cheese someone dropped. Your hands are shaking, but not from fear, just from the weight of what you almost didn't survive. You think about Halric. He's probably not dead yet. You botched the job. You have to finish it later. And that's the other ugly truth. Assassins rarely get it right the first time. You revisit targets. You try again. You improvise. You wait. You endure. There's no shame in a sloppy first attempt. Just don't let it be your last. You once heard a story about an assassin who hid under a bed for 3 days waiting for his chance. Ate stale bread, peed in a vase, got the job done on day 4, became a legend. You're not that patient, yet, but you're learning. Escape routes now live in your head. Loose gates, blind corners, open markets, sympathetic bakers. You spot exits before you even see the target. You've learned the smell of burnt oil means the kitchen's too busy to notice you. That laundry day is a perfect time to climb over a wall. That a merchant cart is better cover than any alley. You're tired. Always tired. But you're getting smarter. You pawn a stolen ring for 2 days' food. Stitch your pants with borrowed thread. Clean your blade on your shirt. You don't rest. Not really. But you do sit and breathe and tell yourself, I got out. And tomorrow, if someone new comes asking for a job, you'll say yes. Because for all the blood, the bruises, the blisters and burns, you like getting away. Even if it means jumping into a moat. Again. You've done a lot of questionable things in your life. Stabbed people during dinner, snuck out of a monastery disguised as a monk, even used a dead man's wig as a fake mustache. But this is possibly your worst idea yet. You're going to try and assassinate royalty. To be fair, it wasn't your idea. You were approached in a smoky tavern by a woman in velvet who introduced herself as Lady Magda, though you're pretty sure she used a different name last week when she was fencing stolen chalices in Bruges. She slid a bag across the table, heavy, promising. The Duke of Calenfort, she whispered, has lived too long. Now, you know enough to ask questions. You've survived this long by trusting no one and always assuming that any coin purse handed to you before the job is either counterfeit, cursed, or stuffed with rocks. But this one was real, which meant the job was real. And you, regretfully, agreed. That's how you find yourself tonight creeping along the outer courtyard of Castle Calenfort, dressed as a royal pigeon handler. Yes, that's a real thing.
Apparently, pigeons are considered messages with wings, and someone has to feed them, train them, and gently scold them when they poop on heraldic tapestries. You try not to think about how bad this idea is. Because killing a noble is one thing. Killing royalty? That's a whole different tier of suicidal. There's no such thing as a quick escape here. The guards are alert, the walls are high, and there's a literal bell tower specifically built to signal trouble. You've cased the place for 3 days, learned the servant routes, memorized guard rotations, found the one spot where the kitchens dump their old bones and peelings, a narrow chute that leads almost directly into the basement pantry. That's your exit plan. Yes, really. You're planning to crawl through a mountain of rotting onions if things go badly. And things usually do. You're not the first to try this. Rumors swirl around the castle about a would-be killer who tried to shoot a poison dart through the keyhole of the royal latrine. Missed. Hit a bishop. The bishop died. The assassin disappeared, probably still hiding in a chimney somewhere. Historians still argue whether any of these high-profile assassinations were real or just paranoia spun by monarchs looking to tighten their grip. But you know the truth. Sometimes people get close, just rarely close enough. Your target is Duke Roland of Callanfort. Not quite king, not quite useless. Somewhere in that irritatingly influential middle. Wealthy, politically powerful, and from what you've observed, extremely paranoid. He's always flanked by guards, eats only food tasted by 3 different people, sleeps in a bed surrounded by bells on string. Literally. One twitch and the whole place sounds like a cathedral with performance anxiety. So you've gone indirect. You're aiming for the morning. That's when he walks in the rose garden, just before breakfast. 1 guard, sometimes 2. You've rigged the arbor gate to stick slightly, just enough for a 3-second delay. That's your window. And now you're crouched behind a marble statue of Saint Bernard of Perpetual Suffering, waiting. The dawn mists roll in, soft and quiet. Your fingers are cold. Your blade is warm against your thigh. You breathe slow, shallow. Footsteps. He's coming. You see the gleam of his robe first, blue, lined with fur. He's mumbling to himself. The guard walks a few steps behind. Casual, overconfident. He reaches the arbor. The gate sticks. You move. Fast. Silent. Almost perfect. Until the swans attack. Yes, swans. Apparently, they were let into the garden for atmosphere. You didn't know. No one knew. They rise like feathered demons, hissing, wings out, flapping directly into your face. You stab one. It lives. It's angry. The Duke turns. You lunge. Your blade catches cloth, not skin. He screams. The guard lunges. You dodge, barely. You sprint. The bells start everywhere. Someone shouts. Crossbow bolts thunk into trees around you. A swan is chasing you. A literal, furious, flapping swan. You dive over a hedge, roll down a hill, and land, miraculously, in the kitchen refuse chute. Victory? Not quite. You land in cabbage water. You gag. You crawl. You emerge in the pantry, reeking and wheezing. You run. Out the servants' hall, into the alley, over a fence, into the arms of...
But you're alive. And that, again, is a win.
That is very rare. So this kiss to the world.
Killing royalty is a different world. You can't just sneak up on a prince like he's a dozing merchant. They're protected, surrounded, bathed in protocol and panic. You remember what an old assassin once told you. Taking out a royal isn't just about the kill. It's about surviving the ripple. Because even if you succeed, you've just declared war on someone with armies, alliances, and an extremely active torture chamber. And if you fail, you become a legend. The bad kind. You've heard the stories. The assassin who disguised himself as a priest, only to be recognized by a tattoo on his ankle. The one who tried to poison a queen's lipstick and accidentally took out her dog. The one who got all the way to the royal chambers only to sneeze. That one got drawn and quartered in 4 different time zones. So yeah, you'll take your brush with royalty as a near miss. You'll lie low, heal up, wait for the next, slightly less suicidal contract. And maybe
Maybe avoid any gardens with swans. You're sitting in a hayloft, smelling like duck grease and dried sweat, flipping a coin you definitely didn't earn honestly. And you're trying to figure out how to be invisible. Not physically invisible, you're not that delusional. But the kind of invisible where no one remembers your face, no one questions your name, and no one realizes you were ever there. Until it's too late. Because if there's one thing every halfway decent assassin eventually figures out, it's this. The kill is only half the job. The other half is disappearing. And for that you need disguises, false identities, and cover stories so bland they'd bore a monk to sleep. You've been everything. A chimney sweep, a parchment seller, a healer of goats. Once you impersonated a traveling cheese inspector named Franz for almost a week. You knew nothing about cheese. You were very convincing. The secret was frowning a lot. Tonight's persona is Ilias the Mud Merchant. You sell exotic, healing mud from the southern marshes. It's actually just river sludge in a jar. But you say it with enough authority that people believe you. That's the key. Confidence and a convincing accent. No one ever suspects the mud guy. You've even got a little cart now full of jars labeled things like Blessed Marsh Salve and Priestly Bog Butter. None of it works. One batch made someone's rash worse, but that's fine. You won't be around long. Right now you're here in Red Hall, a little town full of trade, gossip, and exactly one very wealthy spice merchant who's been skimming from the bishop's vault. Your employer, an anonymous scribe with ink-stained fingers and very expensive shoes, has asked you to remove said merchant with subtlety, which is fine. You like subtle. You set up your stall across from the merchant's house, smile at locals, sell fake ointment, wait, and you watch.
Talks too loud, brags too much, smells like saffron and guilt. He also wears a huge golden ring on his left hand, the one he always uses to open doors. Your plan? Simple. Slip a powdered toxin into the grooves of that ring. One that activates when mixed with sweat and natural skin oils. He'll scratch his beard, rub his eye, and drop dead by dusk. But to get close enough, you need a better cover story. So you become Brother Theodric, a traveling monk researching the healing properties of urban mud. It's ridiculous. It works. You get invited inside. You chat about purity, sin, and skin conditions. He shows you his bathhouse. You compliment his taste in soaps. You subtly drop the poison into the wash towel. He never notices. He dies 2 days later. Peacefully. In his sleep. You pack up your stall that night. No one remembers your face. Except one child who calls out, "Hey, Mudman!" You wave, disappear. Historians still argue whether medieval assassins used elaborate disguises. Some records speak of nobles mysteriously dropping dead days after visiting shrines or eating at feasts. Some even suggest assassins posed as pilgrims, doctors, or entertainers. You've done all three. Once, you joined a puppet troupe for 6 days to get close to a corrupt reeve. Killed him after the show with a poisoned marionette string. No one questioned it. The show had rave reviews, but it's not always perfect. You once forgot your alias mid-conversation, told someone your name was Bidian. 10 minutes later you said Elias. They noticed. You coughed, mumbled something about an identity crisis, and faked a limp for the rest of the day. Another time, you got stuck playing a nun for 3 straight weeks. Longest mission of your life. You still twitch when someone lights incense. There's a skill to this kind of invisibility. You need to know how to blend. You dress plainly. You keep your face forgettable. You speak like a man who doesn't want to be spoken to. You carry nothing valuable, unless a jar of moss counts. But even the best cover stories have cracks. Like the time you tried passing as a weaver, only to be asked to repair a cloak on the spot. You sewed it, badly. They were not impressed. You stabbed that man later, still felt embarrassed. And you've made peace with the fact that sometimes, the only real disguise is confidence. You once posed as a noble's long-lost cousin, convinced an entire dinner party, and danced the galliard with his daughter. Killed him on the balcony during dessert.
Later that night, someone said they thought you looked a bit off. You said, "New haircut." That was enough. In this job, lies are armor. The better the lie, the longer you live. And sometimes, when it's dark, and you're alone, and your hands won't stop shaking, you wonder if you even have a real name anymore. But then,
Because that's what a good assassin does. You don't just kill. You vanish. The man who hired you is dead now. Which normally would be the kind of thing you'd celebrate, except he died before you finished the job he gave you. Now you've got half the payment, no escape plan, in a town full of whispers, starting to wonder why the same traveling candle maker has been hanging around the market square for 4 days and hasn't sold a single candle. Worse, the dead man in question, Sir Aldrich, your now former employer, was supposed to give you critical information. A name, a location, a code phrase, something that would help you not die during this next mission. Instead, he choked on a grape mid-sentence. And you're beginning to suspect someone else may have wanted him dead before he could talk. Which leads to an uncomfortable question that all assassins eventually have to ask themselves. Who's actually playing whom? Because if there's one thing more dangerous than a noble with a grudge, it's a double cross from someone who knows exactly what you do for a living and how few people would care if you disappeared. You start retracing your steps, rethinking every word Sir Aldrich said, the way he avoided eye contact, the oddly new ring on his hand, the sealed letter he refused to open until after the deed. All classic signs of a man with secrets, secrets that die with him. You don't know who your real target is now, which is not ideal. What you do know is that there are now 2 unfamiliar men watching you from across the street. They pretend to argue over fish. They haven't bought any fish. You walk away casually, duck through an alley, turn twice, climb a crate, vault a fence, hide behind a laundry line, and think. Because this is not a job anymore. It's a trap. Someone wanted Aldrich dead. Maybe you, maybe someone else. But it's you who's being hunted now. And you have to figure out who's behind it before they do what you were supposed to do first. This is the other half of assassination no one talks about. Survival inside betrayal. You're not just a killer. You're a pawn, and sometimes a threat to your employer, especially if you know too much. You remember Lucian. Thin guy, nervous laugh, used to take contracts from 3 different nobles at once, until one day, all 3 realized they'd hired him for the same job. He was found in a well, smiling. That's what made it weird. You start digging, you find Aldrich's chamber. Bribe a housemaid, snoop while pretending to bless the furniture. That cover works once, maybe twice. You find a half-burnt letter in the hearth. Can't read much, but one name stands out. Thorn. A name you've heard before. Someone you once worked with on a job that ended with a broken arm and a very angry duchess. Thorn is clever, charming, and absolutely not to be.
let them believe they've scared you off. But you circle back. Hide in a hay cart. Listen. Wait. And that's when you hear it. 2 voices in the dark, whispering by the river. "She took the bait," one says. "Didn't expect her to survive Aldrich. She always was slippery." You smile, a little. You'd be flattered if they weren't clearly planning to kill you. This is what the job becomes, eventually. Not clean hits and tidy escapes, but layers of lies, of half-truths, of contracts within contracts. You get hired by one man to kill another, only to find the second man hired someone else to kill the first, and now they both want you dead just to make the whole thing go away. You once took a contract to kill a merchant, only to learn the merchant was already dead, and his widow had hired you to kill the man she thought killed her husband. You ended up delivering a cake and walking away with 3 goats and a moral headache. There are days you miss simple jobs. The kind where someone says, "See that guy? Kill him." And that's it. But those days are gone. Now, you travel light. No real names, no real allies. Trust is currency, and you're permanently broke. You remember once asking a veteran assassin, old woman named Brenna, what her biggest mistake was. Believing the guy who paid me, she said. I did the job, walked away clean. Found out 2 weeks later I'd just killed the wrong twin. You asked what she did next. Got the other one too, she replied. Evened it out. You smile at the memory as you crouch in the reeds by the river, watching Thorne's men drink and relax and forget that you've been doing this longer than they've been breathing. You take them both down quietly, one with a blade, one with a quick toss into the river. And just like that, you're off script, free-floating. No employer, no clear mission, just you, and a growing list of people who probably want you dead. You make camp in the woods, light no fire, sleep with one eye open. You'll find Thorne, or she'll find you. You sharpen your blade, re-dye your cloak, change your name again, and you think, if you can't trust the people who hire you, maybe it's time to stop being hired. You wake up to frost in your eyebrows and a frog on your chest. The frog blinks at you like it knows your secrets. You blink back. Then you sit up, painfully because your shoulder's still not right after that rooftop tumble in Greyport, and your entire left side has gone numb from sleeping on a root. Congratulations. You are not dead, but you are very, very cold. This is the part of the assassin's life no one brags about. The glamorous stuff, the silent kills, the thrilling escapes, the mysterious cloaks, none of it compares to waking up in a graveyard drainage trench, soaked through, wondering if you can feel your toe.
You must have passed out next to the crypt. Classic move. There's something about graveyards you've found. They're quiet, overlooked, and usually smell just bad enough that no one wants to linger. Perfect for lying low, assuming you don't mind the whole concentrative ghost thing. And the weather. The unholy, bone-gnawing medieval weather. You pull your cloak tighter. It's thin, patched in 4 places, and about as waterproof as a sponge. You once traded a proper wool coat for a poison ring that broke. Still mad about it. Your boots, still wet. Your fingers, blue. Your knife, cold enough to stick to your palm if you're not careful. Winter is the enemy of every assassin, because it slows you down, leaves tracks, makes doors swell shut, turns rivers to traps, and turns you into a walking icicle with a vendetta. And you've got nowhere to go right now. No job, no contact, no backup plan, just a vague desire to not die in a pile of frozen leaves. So you do what you always do. You start walking, limping, technically. There's a village a few miles east, and you're banking on someone there needing a problem solved quietly. Maybe a jealous miller, maybe a merchant with a rival. You don't care. You just want a fire and some food. By the time you arrive, the sun is up, but barely warming anything. Your joints ache like an old door hinge. You try smiling at a guard. He frowns like you owe him a cow. The innkeeper doesn't want your kind. He knows the look. Mud-streaked, underfed, alert like a kicked dog. You're trouble wrapped in fabric. So you find the stables, empty, dry, mostly. You sleep beside a goat named Friska. She snores. It's not just the cold that gets you in this line of work. It's the loneliness, the waiting, the endless hours where nothing happens and no one sees you. You're alone in forests, alone in crypts, alone in crowded taverns where no one says your real name. Historians don't write about this. They like the drama, the chase, the final blade, but they forget that most of an assassin's time is spent doing absolutely nothing. Watching, listening, hiding, freezing. There's a guy you used to know, Tomas. Said he once hid in a privy for 2 days waiting for a duke to take his evening routine. Killed him with a tile shard. Spent a week in bed afterwards because his legs had forgotten how to function. You once waited under a wagon for 19 hours. Ate 3 raisins and a button. You've counted ceiling beams for so long, you can now identify 14 types of medieval wood rot.
The boredom is bad. The cold is worse. You shiver until your teeth clack like dice in a beggar's cup. You flex your fingers every few minutes to keep the blood flowing. You dream of soup. Real soup. With herbs. But here's the thing. You don't quit. You adapt. You start carrying grease for your boot. You learn which moss is warm, which bark repels wind, and which churches leave their back doors unlatched at dusk. You make it work. Barely. And when a local farmer mentions that a certain baron's niece wants to be free of her arranged marriage, your ears perk up. No details yet, but it's enough to get you moving. You follow a lead, spend the next day tailing a carriage, end up in a monastery posing as a mute bell ringer. You don't ring well, but you're quiet, and that's enough. The niece, it turns out, is very much in love with someone who isn't her betrothed. And her uncle? Very much a threat to that love. She wants him gone. Quietly, without scandal. You agree, because the price is right. Because she's desperate. Because you need a reason to move again. That night, you sneak through the orchard behind the Baron's manor. The moon is sharp, the air bites. Your fingers are stiff, but you've learned to work cold. You slide in through the kitchen door, oil your blade so it doesn't squeak, wait behind a pantry barrel until the guard shifts. The kill is quick, a whisper in the dark, a soft exhale, a body slumping gently against an oaken wardrobe. You vanish through the root cellar. No one sees you. You sleep that night beside a river, wrapped in stolen wool, body sore, heart pounding, eyes wide to the stars. And you think, maybe this is the price, not the risk. Not the death, but the in-between, the cold, the hunger, the quiet hours where you're just a shadow curled up under someone else's barn trying not to freeze to death. You don't do it for glory. You do it because it's what you know. And because every time you survive another frozen night, you prove you're still dangerous, even when you can't feel your nose. Faith in this job is a dangerous thing. Not because it's bad to believe in something, but because in your line of work, people use belief as a weapon. And tonight, as you crouch behind a crumbling shrine in a monastery that smells faintly of beeswax and damp limestone, you realize something. You have no idea which side you're actually on. Your target is a man of the cloth, a respected confessor named Brother Corwin. Gentle voice, careful hands, eyes like cloudy wine. He blesses the sick, sings hymns off key, and once allegedly convinced a widow to poison her entire extended family over dinner. You're not here to judge. You're here to make it stop. The woman who hired you, a novice nun with a nervous twitch and an expensive ring hidden beneath her robe, claimed he was working for, quote, a secret faction. She never said who, only that Corwin was dangerous, clever, and connected to something deeper. So now you're in his abbey, pretending to be a silent pilgrim, eating boiled turnips and mumbling prayers under your breath. He notices you. Of course, the religious ones always do this, trying to pick at your guilt like it's a scab that'll reveal your soul underneath. They never expect you to smile back and say, "Redemption's a long walk, and I only brought one shoe." He laughs. And for a moment, you almost forget why you're here. Because that's the trap with faith. It makes monsters look human. It puts a halo on the same man who, just last week, may have orchestrated the poisoning of a rival abbot in Glevmore. Historians still debate how involved the church was in political assassinations. Some insist they were above it, pure, untouched. Others say secret monastic orders were the original intelligence agencies, hiding assassins behind cassocks and candlelit prayers. You've seen both. You once worked with a monk named Tabin, carried his blade in a hollowed-out crucifix, said each kill was an act of purification. He cried after every job. Then he'd recite a psalm and eat a boiled egg. Routine is important. But not every holy killer is conflicted. Some believe, truly believe, that what they do is divinely ordained. that God whispers, remove him, that death is a cleansing, that the blade is a kind of sermon. And you? You believe in surviving, in coin, in silence. Still, as you trail Brother Corwin through the cloisters, footsteps soft against the stone, you can't shake the feeling that he knows. He walks too slowly, lingers in corners, speaks in riddles. At one point he says, "I've always admired those who act in shadows. It's a difficult calling." You don't respond. That night, he invites you to confession. You consider it, you laugh, you decline. He doesn't press. But the look in his eyes is the kind that makes you check your boots for tracking powder. You start digging. Quietly. A few copper coins slipped to the kitchen boy reveal that Corwin receives odd letters, sealed in black wax. They don't come through normal channels. A falconer delivers them, with no falcon. You catch one of the letters, unseal it. It's in cipher. You can't read it, but you recognize the pattern. It's used by a network in the north you tangled with once. Smugglers of relics. Sellers of secrets. Corwin's not just a monk. He's a messenger. Which makes him dangerous in a new way. Not just a threat by action, but a node in a larger web. You sharpen your blade. Ready. But then you meet someone. A girl, maybe 16, thin, pale, confused. She tells you her mother died because of a decision Corwin made. Not a violent one, just a letter he didn't send. A pardon he held back. You ask her if...
"I wondered when you'd come," he says, still facing away. You say nothing.
"I've made mistakes,"
He says, still nothing. "Some men do evil and think it's good. Others do good and never see the harm." You step forward. And you stop. Not because you're weak, but because suddenly you're not sure which man he is. You leave quiet, clean, no trace. In the morning, he's gone. Left a note. Gone to the southern shore to reflect. You never see him again. The novice pays you anyway. "You didn't kill him," she says, confused. "No," you reply. "I just ended what he was doing here." She looks at you like that's somehow worse. And maybe it is. You walk away that day with something strange in your chest. Not guilt, not quite, but something close to doubt, which is a terrible thing for an assassin to carry, because you're already dragging enough weight from the years behind you. You make camp far from any chapel that night. Burn the monk's cipher, sharpen your blade, watch the stars through the trees, and you think, maybe faith isn't the enemy. Maybe it's just another disguise. You're halfway up a castle wall with a pigeon in your cloak and regret in your heart. The pigeon wasn't your idea. You're just delivering it. Well, smuggling it, technically. Because tonight's contract doesn't involve poison or blades. It involves a message. A scroll, sealed in wax, and tied to one very nervous bird's leg, meant to reach a certain noble after his food taster mysteriously dies of stomach rot. Your job is to deliver the bird, drop it in the aviary, and vanish before someone decides that pigeon courier is just another word for spy with stabby potential. You don't ask what's on the scroll. You stopped asking years ago, because tonight's not about who dies. Tonight's about how absolutely absurd assassination attempts can be, and you've seen your share of weird. Like the time someone tried to kill a duchess with a haunted prayer book. The pages were coated with arsenic, but only on the psalms about humility. She was ill for a week, claimed she saw angels made of fire, and then married the bishop who gave it to her. You were hired to clean up that mess. You're still not sure what part of it was real, or the time a monk stuffed a falafel with ground glass and called it divine retribution. He missed. The dog ate it. You've heard tales, some probably true, some so stupid they might be real, about a poisoned tunic that only activated when the wearer sweated, about scrolls that burst into flame upon reading, about a man who trained rats to bite sleeping nobles. You're 80% sure that one was just a baker with a grudge and too much time. Historians still argue whether these wild attempts ever worked, or if they were exaggerated by frightened nobles desperate to make their lives sound more thrilling. But you know this. Desperation breeds creativity. You once helped took a wheat to rig. Everyone blamed divine justice. You were paid in sapphire earrings. One turned out to be glass. Another time, a brewer hired you to lace a rival's beer barrels with dried belladonna leaves. Problem was, the rival drank cider. You drank the beer by accident. Spent 8 hours talking to a tree. The tree offered you a job. You declined. Now, climbing this castle wall, you think about the weirdest one of all. Bread. That's right. A noble in Wessenwald was taken out with a poisoned loaf of bread, baked with rye contaminated by ergot, a fungus that causes seizures, paranoia, and visions. It took days to work, but by the end, he'd accused his own hat of treason and jumped into a moat. You watched, took notes, got paid. Tonight's job is tame in comparison. The wall is slick with moss. The wind is brutal. The pigeon is panicking in your cloak. You whisper reassuring things to it. You feel ridiculous. You reach the aviary tower, pry open the window, toss the bird inside. It flaps around, then settles. Job done. You make your way down. Quiet, efficient. You even avoid stepping in the pot of goose fat at the base of the rampart, a lesson you only had to learn once. No guards, no alarms, no screams. It's almost disappointing. Because the truth is, you've come to appreciate the weird jobs. The ones that don't make sense until they do. The ones that leave people saying, wait, what just happened? You've helped fake exorcisms, stage snake infestations, and once convinced a mayor his reflection had been cursed by a rival. You never touched him. He resigned. You still send his cat birthday presents. You remember one job where a lady hired you to lace her rival's perfumed oils with fox urine. Not fatal, not even harmful, just deeply unpleasant. Ruined her reputation for weeks. No one came near her. You were paid double for creativity. Another time, someone built a crossbow inside a book. Fired once. Nearly took your hand off during the demonstration. You still flinch when someone hands you a Bible. You've made bombs from fermented honey, shivs from soup bones, a noose out of harp strings. Assassination is chaos, disguised as craftsmanship. But it's also exhausting. Because for every clever kill, there are 10 messy failures. And behind every clean accident, there's someone like you, knee-deep in goose droppings, trying to tie a pigeon's leg with gloves on. You head back to town by dawn. Nobody stops you, nobody notices you. You pass the baker who's already setting out fresh loaves. You buy one. It's fine. You sit on a crate, eat slowly, and wonder if the pigeon made it, if the noble read the scroll, if he even understood what it... Because maybe, just maybe, that was your work. They catch you in the worst possible way, mid-nap, mid-snore with one boot off and a piece of bread still in your mouth. It wasn't even good bread. One moment, you're dreaming of warm fires and debt-free living. The next, you're being hauled upright by 3 guards who smell like sweat, chainmail, and onions. You try to resist, but your leg's asleep and your dagger's wedged under your hip. You're caught. And you know what that means. You've seen it before. Watched from the shadows as others were paraded through town, ankles chained, faces bloodied, mouths gagged, not because they were dangerous, but because they had stories to tell. The trial is a joke. Of course it is. They call it court, but it's just a glorified stage. The judge already hates you, the scribes are half asleep. The audience? Peasants, nobles, merchants, even a juggler, all waiting to see the infamous assassin squirm. They ask your name. You give them 6. Let them pick. They accuse you of a dozen murders, 2 thefts, 1 suspected haunting, and
excessive sarcasm in the presence of clergy. You deny none of it, because what's the point? This isn't about guilt. This is theater, and you're the main act. They lock you in a cell beneath the keep. Stone walls, straw bedding, a bucket with history. It's not your first time in a dungeon, but it feels different, heavier. You start thinking about your first kill, not the one they told you to do, the one you chose. The man who beat his wife and bought immunity with coins. You ended him in a tavern outhouse. He died gurgling. You left with a loaf of bread and 2 silver. You don't regret it. But you do wonder if it all started there. You've tried to justify it all over the years. They deserved it. I was just a tool. The world's better off. Some of it's even true. But now? With chains on your wrists and an executioner probably oiling his axe? Now, you wonder if it mattered. You're dragged out 2 days later. The square is full. They've brought out the stage. It's not always a stage. Sometimes it's a cart. Sometimes a wall. Once, it was a barrel full of rats. You still have dreams about that one. But here, today, in this cheerful little town with flower baskets and screaming children, it's a stage. You're made to stand. They read your crimes. The crowd murmurs. Someone throws a turnip. You wish they hadn't missed. Then they ask, any last words? You consider your options. A clever quip, a heartfelt confession, an actual name. You settle for. Your jailer cheats at cards. And then, silence. The executioner steps forward, axe in hand, hood on, You have no idea who she is. You run. Someone cuts your chains. You don't look to see who. You leap off the stage, roll under a wagon, kick a basket of apples at a guard, and sprint like your life depends on it, because it does. You vanish into the city like smoke in the wind. Later, panting in an alley, bleeding from a dozen scrapes, you ask, who helped me? No answer. You find a note in your cloak. 3 words. Not done yet. Historians still argue about famous escapes, whether assassins ever truly got away, whether they lived quietly afterward or were hunted until the end. You've read those stories. Half of them are probably about you. But what they don't mention is the middle part, the in-between, the cell, the terror, the moment you realize you're not just feared, you're famous. And that's worse, because fame paints a target on your back. You once said, the best assassin is the one no one talks about. Now, they chant your name in taverns, sing songs, terribly inaccurate ones. You're tired. You've been hunted, betrayed, dragged through mud, chained, nearly executed. But you're still here, and for the first time in a long time, you wonder. Maybe it's time to vanish, for good. Maybe, but not today. Today, someone still needs to pay. You ride out of the city on a borrowed horse, with no saddle, no plan, and no idea who pulled you off that execution stage. But you owe them your life. For now. The road stretches ahead, long and muddy and lined with half-dead trees that look like they've seen too much. You feel the same. Somewhere behind you, your old life is smoldering. Not literally, not yet. But the past you've been dragging around, it's burning up in pieces. You don't stop riding until your thighs scream and the horse starts giving you those sideways looks that say, I will throw you if I must. Eventually you find a quiet place to rest, a mossy grove near a stream, hidden from the road, just big enough to vanish in. You make a fire, small, careful, and you sit. And for the first time in what feels like years, you ask yourself the one question every assassin avoids. Did any of this even matter? The names, the jobs, the disguises, the deaths, especially the deaths. Did you change anything? Did one less corrupt magistrate actually help someone? Did some war not start because you stopped a duke from delivering a letter? Or was it just coin changing hands, one body for another, the same play in different costumes? You think about the girl in the monastery, the baker who winked, the child who called you mudman, the goat who snored. You smile just a little. Maybe you matter to them. Maybe not in the history books, but in those little weird moments where someone's life veered slightly because of your shadow. Historians still argue whether individual assassins influenced the course of kingdoms. Some say they were pawns, minor players in a larger game. You only know that when you kill someone, the world stutters. People look over their shoulders, maps get redrawn, bread prices go up or down. And you keep walking. That's always been your curse. You move through the story without being in it. Always the footnote, never the chapter. And yet, you're still breathing. You clean your blade with an old cloth, not because there's blood, just habit. The fire crackles. Somewhere nearby, an owl hoots. You listen. And you make a decision. Not a dramatic one. No throwing your weapons in the river. No vow of redemption. Just this. You're done taking random jobs. From now on, if you're going to kill someone, it's going to be for a reason. Your reason. You toss your old alias in the fire, literally. You had it written on parchment for some dumb reason. It burns fast. You rest for the night. You dream of a life where you sell actual mud. Or maybe soup. Or maybe just sit in a chair and let someone else be the terrifying story whispered over tavern tables. You wake with sore legs and a new name in mind. Doesn't matter what it is. No one knows your face anymore. You're a ghost again. You pass a crossroads by noon. There's a signpost. One way points toward the sea, the other toward the mountains. You flip a coin. Heads, sea. Tails, mountains. It lands on its edge, in the dirt. You laugh. Of course it does. You pick a direction anyway, and you walk. The path stretches on, softer now. The sun has dipped below the hills, casting long golden shadows that blend with twilight's hush. Your footsteps are quieter than before, not because you're hiding, but because the world itself has softened. The wind moves gently through the trees like an old friend's whisper. A bird trills once, and then silence settles in like a blanket. You keep walking, your breath even, your pulse finally slow. The air is cooler now, touched with the earthy scent of pine and the faint sweetness of distant fires. Somewhere, someone is cooking. Someone is safe. And for once, you are too. Your shoulders relax, your thoughts drift. The ache in your feet fades into the rhythm of the road. No more guards, no more locked doors. No more wondering if tonight is the night you don't come back. Just the road. And the promise that for now, you're no one. No names, no jobs, no sharp blades in the dark. Just breath and warmth and sleep on the edge of the world. You find a patch of grass beside an old oak. You lie down, arms folded behind your head, watching the stars emerge one by one. And as the last thread of tension unwinds from your chest, you finally allow yourself this thought. Maybe this is enough. Close your eyes. Let go. Sleep well.